Almost every single art student I've known has wanted to run their own small art business, and I'm no different, but I failed. Well, that may be a bit of clickbait, but it's true that my first attempt could have gone better. I jumped headfirst into buying merchandise and applying to shows, which I did get into, but without any real preparation, and this all became very apparent to me at the most recent event I vended at. So at the time of recording this, about a week and a half ago, I attended an event called Highlands Pride in Louisville, Kentucky. It went pretty well for me. It was one of my better shows, but I still feel that it could have gone a lot better. And what I believe held me back from doing better was my print selection at this particular event because it was a Pride event. This may be kind of obvious, but I really like medieval stuff, so most of my prints were of my medieval D&D fantasy characters, which, while I believe that would do really well at an event like DragonCon in Atlanta, Georgia, it didn't do particularly well at a Pride event, because that's just not what people were there to buy. And that may seem pretty obvious, but in the moment when you're busy creating art and trying to figure out sourcing prints and other merchandise like that, you're not thinking about that as much, or at least I wasn't, because I really just wanted to get my art that I cared the most about out there. I believe I had a similar issue with my booth at this event in particular, where it just wasn't eye-catching enough. So my main takeaway from that is that I think I just need to vend at events that more match the style of art I create. And if I want to vend at a Pride event again, I think I need a different line of merchandise that I can bring to that event. Additionally, the art I had up is art from the past few years, so some of it is kind of old. And while I still like it, I feel that the stuff I make now better represents me and my brand. In addition to updating my prints, I've been trying to work on developing a more cohesive business art style, I guess you could call it, as well as looking into other platforms like Patreon and Ko-Fi. But I can get into all those specifics in a different video. Today, I want to talk about where this all started. So, some of you may know this, but most of you probably don't. I went to Savannah College of Art and Design, and I actually just graduated this May. I'll be talking about that a little bit more later, but for now, I want to talk about the Savannah Farmers Market. So, around August of 2023, or maybe it was July, I can't quite remember, I made my first merch design ever, which was this Ronnie sticker and keychain I'm gonna throw up on screen right now. Around this time, I also discovered that it was possible to buy a license to vend at the local farmers market, which I happen to live just a couple blocks away from. To be clear, I no longer live there, don't try and find me, please. There wasn't really an easy way to fill out this application, though. I went onto Savannah City's government website and had to search around quite a bit until I think I finally found, like, Bureau of Leisure Services, I believe it was. And on there, they had a phone number that I called, and then I finally got to speak to somebody, and they told me basically how the application process worked. You could come in at any time they were open, basically, to go and get your application, but you could only turn it back in from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. on Wednesdays. At least I'm pretty sure those were the times. I can't quite remember, it's been like 2 years. Which is like, okay, weird, but I didn't have a job at the time, so it wasn't a huge deal, right? Well, the issue was that applications closed in the same month that I was applying, in September. So I needed to find one of the 4 Wednesdays before it closed to turn in my application. And this office was not nearby. It was, I think, 2 or 3 miles away, which in Savannah, it's not that bad. It's an incredibly fun city to walk in, and at the time I was still riding my bike. So I figured, okay, I have one Wednesday left where I can still turn this in. I will bring it there on that Wednesday. But if you live in the United States, and especially if you live in the Southeast, you know that they get hurricanes fairly frequently. And this particular year is when Hurricane Idalia was coming through. And on that Wednesday specifically. So you may be thinking, oh, you just weren't able to get it in. Well, I wanted to vend in this freaking farmer's market so bad that I decided to ride my bike in a downpour all the way to the office just to turn it in. And no, they were not working there. Everybody had the day off because there was a literal hurricane like 40 or 50 miles to the west of us. Like, to be clear, I wasn't biking in an actual, like, in the middle of a hurricane. That would be insane. We didn't get hit directly by it. We got hit by, like, the side of it. But regardless, it was still a downpour, and I was soaked. So what I did was I slipped my application through the little mailbox, and on top of it, I included a post-it note that said, "Hey, please, let me vend here. I just rode my bike through a hurricane to get here." And luckily the people at this office were very nice, and I was able to pick up my application a week or so later. And the application was only $10 annually, so it's an incredibly good deal, even though it's incredibly annoying to actually go and get it. In my particular class year, I think I was one of the first people to do this, not like the first, but one of the first. So later on, I became a resource for people to go to ask how they could also get set up in the farmer's market, which I won't lie was a pretty cool feeling. So, once I actually got started vending there, I had to come up with a table setup, which I'd like to get into in a different video. But I would wake up at 8 a.m. on Saturday, I would eat and go set up around like 9 or so. Now this was just a normal farmer's market in the middle of the city, so it got a lot of foot traffic and a lot of tourists. And usually what I think people were looking for there was more souvenir type stuff. Like, I remember this one lady did paintings specifically of scenery around Savannah, which I actually did buy. I bought a print from her. Her art was gorgeous. Which is to say, I didn't start out making a lot. I easily made back the fee for the license because it was only $10, and I think I made like $20 or $30 on my first day after 4 hours of being there. 4 to 5 hours was my usual length of staying there. I could have stayed longer, but Savannah's in the southeast United States. It gets really hot in the warm months. But I remember one day, my best 4 hours ever was when I made $132-ish. That really motivated me to keep going, and I really did want to, but college kind of took over once I entered my junior year. In my freshman and sophomore years at SCAD, it was mostly refreshing on like foundations and basics, so things that I could kind of turn my brain off to do a little bit, since I'd already studied that on my own previously. But for my junior and senior year, we really began to dive into our portfolio classes and more industry-specific type things, where I really had to focus a lot harder. And also, my workload just increased, which meant that I didn't have nearly as much time or energy for the farmer's market, and I believe by around the summer of 2024, I kind of completely fell off of it. That's not to say I didn't do any vending during 2024, though. My first actual convention ever was called Savannah Animazing in winter of 2024. I believe it was January specifically. This was a 2-day convention in the Savannah Convention Center. And unfortunately, not only was this convention not organized super well, as they had way too many artists to attendee ratio, but also I just was in a bad spot. I was near this gigantic pillar way near the back of the hall, along with a few other artists. And some of the other tables in our row didn't even have artists in them. Despite those issues, I still made back table and about $100 to $200 in profit, which for my first convention ever, I was incredibly happy with. Additionally, the people we sat next to were very kind and they were very fun to talk to. I remember the people to our right made these really cool custom bags and pouches. I also got to talk to a lot of cool cosplayers and take pictures if they allowed me to. So I wasn't discouraged at all by that. In fact, I was quite encouraged. So I applied to another convention as soon as I could. That second convention turned out to be Savannah Comic-Con, which occurred in late summer of 2024. Well, it was actually supposed to occur quite a bit earlier in the year, but it got moved to August. And that would have been okay, but there were barely any SCAD students there in August. And SCAD students made up a huge portion of my sales, as well as many other artist sales. And, as I would learn a little bit later after applying, this con was run by the exact same dude who ran the first poorly organized one. I never learned why the date got changed. Maybe the venue was cheaper then and he didn't want to spend so much money on it. I don't know, but the result was the same. It was at a much worse time of year than it was previously, to the point where I was worried that it might not even be worth going. I was already exhausted from my summer classes, as because I was behind due to COVID, I had to take summer classes almost every year. Actually, I think it literally was every year I took summer classes. Anyway, I decided to go regardless. And I'm really glad I did. I had a lot of fun at this convention. I made back table plus some profit. I can't remember if it was more or less than Animazing, but it was pretty similar. I once again had great table mates to both sides of me. The people on the right had driven all the way up from Florida, and we chatted quite a bit throughout the convention. We also traded quite a few stickers and prints, and we both bought stuff from each other, which was really fun. I also got some Dungeon Meshi merch from the people to my left, and I still have one of those keychains on my iPad case. I'll insert some clips of the merch from the table to my right, but unfortunately I cannot remember the name of the artist to the table to my left. I once again saw a lot of sick cosplays, a lot of Trigun too, which was awesome to see because I love Trigun. A bunch of friends and classmates I knew were there too, so at downtimes when it wasn't nearly as busy, which was pretty often to be honest with you, I would run around and go say hi to them. So despite entering the con with a feeling of dread, I left feeling quite happy about it and really glad that I decided to stick with it. This ultimately would be the last convention I would vend at in Savannah, partly because my time at SCAD was about to come to a close, and also just because there weren't that many conventions in Savannah to start with, as the city is so small. Between these two conventions, though, was something called SCAD's Illustration Expo. And oh boy, did I do well here. So SCAD's Illustration Expo is an annual event. It is completely free to both attend and participate in as an artist. They announced it around February, and I believe applications opened either in March or late February. It was actually really hard to find where to apply because SCAD is not the greatest at letting you know where stuff is, like online. But whatever, I eventually found out how to apply, made my tiny little portfolio, zipped it all into a PDF and sent it off. I had a bad feeling I wouldn't get in because, SCAD's a huge school and illustration is a very big department. There's a lot of students in it, so a lot of competition. But a couple weeks later, I got an email saying that I had gotten in. I would soon receive follow-up emails that gave me instructions on what I would need to do in order to attend the event. It was mostly just attend this panel by SCAD's Illustration Club, which I was like, okay, cool, great, that's easy, I can do that. It was mostly stuff I had already known since I had already evented at a convention and the farmer's market before, but it was nice that they told us about a bunch of different manufacturers we could go to. Like, there were some manufacturers they listed that I had never heard of. I also made plans to sit next to somebody specific when I was at this meeting, which ended up working out. So when the data setup finally rolled around, and all of this happened on the same day, so we had to get there pretty early. I think it was around like 6 or 7 in the morning. I wanted to make sure I got there to be pretty close to first in line. I think I arrived there at about 6:30 or something like that, and the doors were supposed to open at 7, so I was like, all right, great, I got here super early. But there were already a ton of people going in, so I kind of freaked out. I was like, oh god, am I going to be able to get a good spot? Is the entire first floor going to be full? I don't know why I was worried about that. We weren't using the second floor. It was literally so fine. And yeah, it was fine. I found a really good spot. It was one of the first classrooms near the entrance. And while I didn't get a spot near the door to that classroom, I was still pretty visible due to how high my booth was. I actually got told to lower my display a little bit, but it was whatever because it still looked fine. The setup was kind of weird though. We were using the drafting tables we used for class, and there were about 4 people per table in that specific room. So I only had about 3 feet of space to set all my stuff up in, which, since I honestly didn't have a ton of stuff, worked out pretty well. And I actually really like how this display looks even still. It hasn't really ever taken me that long to set up, so once I was done, I still had maybe 15 to 20 minutes to run around and look at other people's booths. And one of my favorite things I saw, and I think what was a lot of people's favorites, was that one person had made trading cards of our professors. I wish I had gone and bought some of these cards, but I believe they sold out really quickly. Besides that, I went around and talked to some friends before everything began, and I took mental notes of who I wanted to run back to right before it ended so I could buy some of their stuff, or trade stickers. Now, I didn't really think this would get insanely busy, but wow, sometimes it was like hard to move around. And that's partially because, we're in classrooms and they're not small classrooms, but also it's definitely not the same as an entire convention hall. And also just a lot of people from the general public showed up, as well as art directors from the previous day's panel where we watched a bunch of art directors talk about their various industries. None of them actually bought anything from me, and also some of them had to leave before the illustration expo, but it was still really cool to see that they were there and that SCAD had scheduled things so that the art directors would easily be able to attend the expo if they didn't have anything urgent going on. Most of my sales were actually to other SCAD students rather than the general public, which was actually kind of fun because I was able to make a lot of new contacts and friends. Another thing that made me incredibly happy was that one of my favorite professors I had ever had there came by after a while and bought one of my stickers. I had heard that professors would buy things from students, which did end up very much being the case, but I don't know, I just didn't expect it to happen to me. So when it did, it made my entire day. And then around 15-ish minutes before the expo ended, and it was pretty dead at that point, I got to finally run around with a bunch of my little Pride Dragon stickers in my hand and run up to people and say, hey, do you want to trade stickers? I wasn't even really looking at what stickers they had. I was just having so much fun interacting with the other students there that I didn't really care. I just wanted to trade. I think pretty much everybody said yes, except maybe 1 or 2 people, which is totally fair. You never have to accept a sticker trade. There was actually a second building that the expo was happening in. So basically, I was in the main hall where all of our classes are, but there was a second hall that was, I think it's pretty much just an auditorium. I never was in there that much, but that's where everybody else was. And the people there did insanely well. I heard people say they made around $700, which is insane to me, given that this event is completely free to attend. Personally, I believe I made around $350 to $400, which I am incredibly okay with. It seemed like the other hall was just simply doing better that year, even though the AC was broken. I still really wish I was in that hall. It was hot as fuck in there, but I wish I was in there. At the time, and I think even still, this was my most successful event I ever attended in terms of net profit. During all of this, I was passively running my Etsy. I'd intermittently sold stuff on it, mostly surrounding when I did events, but around when Savannah Comic Con happened, I ended up closing it down just because I had gotten so busy with college, and I never really opened it back up. I hadn't given up, though I did feel a bit discouraged given how much work this was alongside my classes, so everything kind of just stopped. I went on an indefinite hiatus, graduated college with a BFA, briefly moved back home before finding an apartment with my boyfriend. I was going to just try to find an industry job in TTRPGs or gaming, but, well, that quickly became a bit discouraging as well. Not to mention how hard finding a full-time job is in general right now. I've even spoken to people directly who work with companies that are household names, as well as some smaller studios, but still nothing has come of it. Yet. We stay positive here. So what does all that mean for me now? Where has it landed me? Well, as I said earlier, I'm really trying to revive my shop. Highlands Pride really was the catalyst for that, because I saw how well my partner and one of my friends did, and I thought, I can do this. I just need to plan better. So far, I've gone ahead and updated my Etsy's branding, and I have almost a dozen new prints ready to drop. Additionally, I'm working on creating a Ko-Fi shop, and soon we'll be working on a Patreon, which I plan to have a sticker club on. I've also narrowed down what I want to focus on in my art, especially the art style I draw in, which I just really didn't have a clear idea of what I wanted it to look like when I started. I think I finally found the balance between something that looks painterly but doesn't take a million years to finish. I've also been writing down a ton of video ideas I'd like to do, including the one I'm working on currently, and that may actually include more animatics in the future because I'm pretty sure that's what everybody here knows me from. Oh, speaking of that though, some of my prints do have the characters from those animatics in them if you're interested. Those will be dropping in the big print drop I plan on doing pretty soon. I'll throw a date up on screen once I know exactly when that's happening. I am also going to be hosting a D&D campaign in the future. I'm not entirely sure if that will be recorded yet, but if it is, you'll be seeing more of it. Also, one of the biggest helps I've had is just my boyfriend's support. If you don't know, my boyfriend is Franco Shadow King Shadowed Cypher, and he also has his own art shop. He also recently just did a huge drop, and he's been working incredibly hard on all of his products. He puts so much care into his packaging and every single piece, so I, completely unbiased opinion, really think you should check him out. What this means for my channel in the future is that I plan to do a lot more videos like this one. In the past, I've done some of these as well. They're now privated because I'm not a huge fan of them anymore, but I found during this recording process, I've really enjoyed doing this. I think it'll take some time for me to find my exact style of video, but I'm now very optimistic about where I'm headed. I do think I'll still be looking for studio work, but until then, I'll be working my part-time job and pouring all of my passion into this project. I'll also be looking for more conventions around the Louisville and general Midwest area, and I'm also very interested in attending conventions in Atlanta, like Dragon Con, which I mentioned earlier. I'll be doing my absolute best to keep all of my social medias, including YouTube, updated. Speaking of that, here's where you can find me. I'm mostly active on Instagram right now, but I plan to start using TikTok a whole lot more. I think that about wraps it up. So, until next time, don't forget to believe in yourself, and have a nice day.